Order the meeting for the Greater Boca Raton Beach and Park District, March 7th, 2022. Joanne, you want to do a roll call?
Commissioner Ernst? Commissioner Engel? Commissioner Rollins? Commissioner Vogelsang?
Here.
Commissioner Wright?
All right, any changes to the agenda? Nope. Okay. Public requests. Any online? Please press *9 to raise your hand. Nope. All right, public requests are closed. We'll do approval of the minutes of the previous board meeting held on February 22nd, 2022.
Approve.
Or any discussion? Joanne?
Commissioner Ernst? Commissioner Engel? Commissioner Rollins?
Yes.
Commissioner Vogelsang? Commissioner Wright? Motion passes.
All right, regular business. The first thing we have is the Hornley Park Maintenance Facility discussion. Brianne.
Commissioners, on page 6 of your agenda packets is some information carried over from our last meeting where we discussed and heard from city staff about the maintenance building at DeHornley Park, where we had put in $2,025,000 into a reserve fund, and we were pending approval of this project based on these operational costs. The city sent an email anticipating our cost to be 30% of the operational cost of this building, which is roughly $19,770 a year. They did a breakdown of those fees, which you can see on page 6 of your agenda packets. The city is still requesting the district approval of that project, which would move those funds from a reserve fund into an allocated fund for this project.
Discussion on this?
My question is to council as to whether or not we have a contractual responsibility for more than we have allocated it in our reserve fund.
May I respond, Madam Chair? Thank you. Commissioner, good evening. Nice to see you again. We've reviewed the agreement and we've had some conversation in public at the last meeting through my law partner, Mr. Horowitz. And we've notated in the provisions that were highlighted for you in the backup at the last meeting, the reference to proportional share and allocation of total capital costs. There's nothing in the agreement which would preclude a capping event, which is what has been suggested. We believe is legally supportable based upon our review of the contract.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion that we cap our commitment to the maintenance facility at DeHornley Park at the amount allocated in our reserve fund. And I believe that's $2,025,000. Okay.
Okay. Do we have a discussion? Anyone?
Joanne, could you repeat Steve's motion for me, please? Okay, so Steve is suggesting that we cap the amount, and our council just said we could not do that. We could cap the amount, which means that if it gets higher than this, even though the contract says we'd pay a percentage, if the bids come in for the reconstruction, we would not be obligated for anything. Chair, to the extent that we, as you as a public body, have evaluated the information that was being asked for, and you've looked at your contract, you looked at the ILN, looked at the analyses provided for by staff. We're giving you our best legal advice in the context of what your parameters are. And to the extent that we believe it's legally supportable, to the extent that the other side may believe differently at some future moment, that could happen. But I think that the current provisions in the contract give you some leeway and some flexibility, and also fulfilling your public commitment under the interlocal agreement. And what is the leeway, Sam? I'm sorry.
So what is the leeway that,
Well, you know, the language speaks in terms of proportionality. It talks in terms of allocation. There's no limitation where it says you cannot cap your obligations. And I think that you're acting with prudence. You're acting with public acumen in the context of what you believe to be thoughtful and doable in the context of this organization's public budget. And I think that that's the basis on which you're making your decision.
well, I think also, I mean, by the fact that it's in the reserve, does that, in the reserve portion of our budget, does that mean that we have the money allocated within this, within the scope of that?
I mean, I would turn to me to confirm that for you, but I believe that to be the case.
It's not allocated to this project until you approve it.
Right.
It's just in a reserve, a CIP reserve fund.
Committed.
Okay, well, not- I have to tell you, I have been an opponent of this project since it first hit the table long before some of you were born. And I think that it's, you know, a luxurious building that we don't need meeting rooms, the showers and the other things that are in there. Plus the fact that they're not moving any of the equipment from Patch Reef, which takes up parking over there. And I don't see how being under shelter is going to improve the maintenance of the equipment or make it last longer. I think we're still going to be looking at the same replacement schedule. You know, I may be in the minority, but I just have to say that the size and scope of this project is just too large. The final cost of it too uncertain, and then the continuing maintenance of the facility is another item that bothers me. But I think if it were scaled down, and you heard the DICO say that if we weren't participating in this, they would not build it. I don't know that we have much in the way of the ability to deny the request, but I certainly don't support it. The size and scope, I think there's an easier way to taking care of the equipment without building a, you know, what was it, a $7 million project? Is that what the total was? I just think that's that's an egregious amount of money to ask the public to spend for a facility. Just my opinion for the commissioners.
What didn't you ask him if there was a way to scale it down? And what did he say? I mean, did he say that was doable?
You know, I don't remember, Brian, if I asked that question directly. I asked, did I? Okay.
They talked in their presentation about the elements that they had scaled down. They felt like they had done a pretty thorough evaluation of things that they could remove when you prompted that question.
Yeah.
That was the.
Well, I still think that, you know, it's probably in someone's mind's eye, an ideal facility with meeting rooms and conference rooms and offices. But the people that are doing the work are coming in, picking up the uniforms, and they're going out, cutting the grass, coming back, clocking out and going home. I just don't see the value that we would spend this kind of money for a facility and still have equipment sitting out in the yard over at Patch Reef. If you're going to, if your idea is to keep the equipment out of the elements, then move Patch Reef elements that's taking up space over there that we're probably going to need. That if we expand, you know, the pickleball over at Patch Reef, we're probably going to need those parking spaces. And when I first started going to Patch Reef for and coaching in a particular sport, those vehicles were not there. And then over time, you know, they moved in and they haven't been taken away since. And we have changed the operational mode of that facility since now we have sports turf, not grass. So we don't need the same kind of equipment, and we don't need to maintain the fields exactly the same way we did. So I'm just disappointed in the fact that the size and scope of the project, the fact that that equipment's not going to be moving in, the fact that the personnel that are now occupying the pavilion at the Spanish River Fields on the south end of it, the main pavilion, and the same thing goes for the baseball quad. There's people in those offices over there. I don't understand why that cannot be more accessible to the public, which is what I think was originally intended until the park rangers just very slowly migrated into that room, took over the pavilion office there. It was not air conditioned before. Now it's been, has a window unit. So, and I don't deny this fact that these people need a safe place to go, but why not at the main maintenance building if you got all these office spaces there? So, you heard my objections last time we were talking, and I still have those reservations. I still feel concerned that this project is going to go over budget, like everything else is done that we've worked on with the city. Pump and piping, the tower at Red Reef. This is just where we are in our current construction environment, and we have other projects where we could use this money to, in my opinion, to better use.
For Mr. Gorin, is there anything in our agreement that dictates that we could ask for at least 3 bids when they go out for bid for this?
May I respond? I don't recall a specific provision about that, although common procurement by public entities would suggest that there should be, in some form or fashion, a competitive selection process. It's not specific to this document that I could find, unless Brianne has a different sense for what may have been discussed. You could certainly, in a good faith effort, conditionalize your approval if it's given this evening to a bidding situation that would give you the comfort of knowing that there was at least some type of competitive process that gets to the answer. That's certainly within your prerogative to ask. It may well be something that as partners, quote unquote, in the public setting that you both are, you're all elected officials, you are beholden to the same type of procurement obligations of making sure that you're getting the best deal for the dollars that are being spent, which are typically tax dollars. It would be the wish of the commission to conditionalize the payment to bidding or some other type of quotations. That's certainly not out of the realm.
Brianne, do they have the same type of constraints and conditions that we do when we have an RFP and we have, certain?
The city does. They have a pretty thorough procurement process. So they put this out. They follow all the statutes that we follow, plus any that have been incorporated by the city themselves. So they will put this out to bid and have a public opening of those bids. And they go through a lot of the same steps that we do. In fact, a few more layers just because they have a more detailed procurement process.
Gorin, do we have any say if in this, if they go with a certain contractor and it's much higher than another contractor, but they feel that contractor does better work or has other constraints?
I think the best answer, Madam Chair, is to look at the decision when it's made. I'm not sure the contract will give you the prerogatives you're looking for specifically, but in a bidding situation, it's not always the lowest and best bid. It can be the most responsible bid, which could be the case. And that would not preclude you from raising an objection if in the event the procurement code in the city was either not complied with or they failed to comply with the obligations of fairness and accuracy in the context of what bid they awarded, which is another lawyer's term for they picked a higher bidder because they had a preference for that bidder. Hopefully there was legal support and evidence to support that issue. That does not in any way, shape, or form preclude this body from raising its concerns. You also are the guardians and the custodians of public dollars. So you're constrained, as are they, to the same principles. So if you feel concerned that there might be a misstep because of that, then you should raise the concern.
Point does that happen when they get the bids back?
Well, there's now minutes created this evening that would indicate you have an interest, obviously, in that. And if you would choose in making your motion this evening to, as a subpart, raise the bar and raise the concern about making sure that the bids are consistent with the standards associated with acquiring goods and services. not to suggest a rescission of your decision, but quite frankly, public boards can make decisions to rescind their decisions. I'm not suggesting to do that here, but, and not to threaten and not to be overburdensome, but to suggest that this board has a sincere public interest and public purpose in making sure that the bids that are awarded are compatible with the best possible standards and best practices. Because it's, with all due respect, a good portion, that's your money. It's the district's dollars.
So that would have to be an addition to Mr. Ernst and Mr. Engel's motion and second.
If it were to be held in order, yes.
A quick question here. My motion doesn't compel us to spend the entire amount. It's just a cap. I'll be able to clarify this, that at our discretion, if we feel that that contribution is too much for us to afford for whatever reason, that we can lower our contribution as if the necessity arises.
If I may, Madam Chair, if there were a premise to suggest they need to do that, perhaps that door could be reopened. I don't mean to sound bold or inappropriate, but your obligations as a public body are not a blank check. There are conditions associated with the blank check, or a check may not be blank, but it is a check nonetheless. And although the contract may not be as specific as you might like it to be, a fair practice, benchmarking for bidding and procurement still do matter in the context of acquisition of goods and services. It cannot be with a reckless disregard for a process that would get the best dollars for the governmental agency, city
just-
and district included.
Just quickly, I want to say, I just to make sure that there's no confusion, I've sat in on a couple of these processes with the city, the procurement process, and they are very thorough. I mean, they follow by the book, and I know that there's a lot of layers to it, and sometimes it seems convoluted, but it's a well thought out process, and I know that they've been very thorough in that. I know recently, even with some of our bids that we've had here, we have not had as many people bid on projects, and my understanding is that a lot of the restrictions that some, and I know the city, I think, has had this too, where they're not getting as many bids as they once got on projects because contractors are so busy right now that they don't set time aside to fulfill all the requirements of bid specs or bid packages that municipal governments are putting out. So we're not getting as many bidders back. I just wanted to put that out there because that's been an issue we've had. And I think the city has seen it too, where these contractors are so busy now, they don't rely on the city work as much as they did previously, and they would take the time to fill out all these bid packages and sign all these documents that we require along the way. So I just want to put that out there.
I just want to say too, like, don't forget, they're paying 70% of this as well. So I don't think they would just laissez-faire pick somebody, that was extraordinarily more and spend more taxpayer dollars just because they like the contractor better or whatever. They're gonna go through their procurement process and pick the best, the one that meets all the requirements. But a couple of things though, I think in terms of, is it possible that a couple of things that would make you a bit happier, Bob, is if I do understand that the cost is very high, but if we do cap it at 2,025,000, then we won't be spending any more than that, right? It's capped at that. So we'll know what we're spending. We won't be spending any more. And then what if they, in terms of, we'll give them the 2,025,000. Are they willing to take the equipment from Pat Reef and put it over there as a part of us giving them the 2,025,000? Do you think they would be willing to do that? That's something that we could discuss with them as part of the as part of us as being a partner in this. Would they be willing to move the equipment from Pat Reef to the new facility?
Ask Brienne, because I think you asked him that question, didn't you, Brienne?
Count for that equipment. That equipment was not being planned. I don't know how that would impact or if they'd have the space for it because they did not include that in the specs of this building. I don't know. Like, I've seen the equipment over there at at Patch Reef. And even as long as I've been with the district, it's grown over there as far as what's sitting out in the parking lot. And I did talk to Michael about at least during the weekends, parking it behind the community center because it takes up so much of that prime parking space where people are needing it for the fields. So I think they were going to start doing that. I don't know if that has started, but we've talked about that. I don't know if they would have the space. I could certainly talk to them about that and see, even if they could on the weekends use that parking lot at the maintenance facility to move some of those trucks so that they have more parking spaces available to the public.
I'm dug in and just think that the project is too large. It's unnecessary for the spaces that they have allocated for staffing. The folks that we pay for are in the field most of the time. No, I'd say 80% of those people there, you got people in there that may be supervisors, but I think that during the day, most of the time, and if you were to schedule it correctly, you probably could manage to downsize the facility where you have offices. And I know they're talking about they have room for expansion. And the only expansion I know of is phase 2, and that hasn't been. I think they have put in suspense the Calvin Giugiaro proposal to design phase 2. So I don't see that happening this fiscal year. It's just they may have said, yeah, we've redesigned it to the point where we need all that space. I just don't believe it. And I've talked to other people on maintenance facilities, and I think they just don't need the allocation of space, in my opinion, for the size of the money we're talking about. I can't go along with it. Even if they move the equipment over to from Patch Reef, Aaron, I just have an objection to the total cost of the project, and I can't get past that. And I'm not comfortable in hearing, or the way I read the contract, and I'm certainly a layperson reading it, is that we're obligated for the maintenance, 30% of that, and we're obligated for the guarantee. If it comes back in over $1 million or so more, then we're probably going to be asked to fund our percentage of that. And saying that we're going to cap it, I don't know whether we've got the legal ability to make that stand up or not.
One of the reasons that I put forth my motion was because I agree with you, Bob. I think that facility is too much. I think when I presented the motion, my thought was, this is the maximum that we will spend on this. And I think the city has to realize that we have so many dollars. And just like when they came back to us about the golf course, that it was too much and we didn't need what we were proposing, I think the same thing applies here. Could they use a maintenance facility? Yeah, I agree with you. For a place where the park personnel can clock in, clock out, maybe a locker room to change a uniform, but showers, offices, conference rooms. I don't know, what are they going to talk about that they don't talk about out in the field? You know, what are they going to talk about that they can't talk about here, or city in the community center, or any one of a number of facilities that we have for conferences? So I agree with you. I just want to put a limit. I know we need something, but what they're proposing isn't it.
The final comment. Budgeting process. If we don't allocate money for a project, we can't spend it. Is that a fair statement? Would you support that, Sam?
I think that's legally accurate.
Okay, so if if we support Steve's motion with a cap and we stick to our guns on that cap, is everybody on board with that if they come back and ask for money more than that?
There's a lot of stuff going on here. And just to kind of recap what we're saying, you got, starting with the agreement, we have an obligation that is in the agreement, and it was written by members who were on this board at that time whenever Councilor Hornley was done. So there was something that was given, something that was taken at the time. It is what it is. It's not the best thing, but it is what it is. So 30% is 2,025,000. Okay.
Real quick.
Yep.
Sam, just for clarification, in the contract, when it says 30% based on total end cost that they come to, or is it, it doesn't say?
May I read it, the record real quickly?
Yes.
We're talking about future improvements. Yeah, it's worth noting again, which is the district and the city agree that in addition to the construction of the project components and elements that are set forth in attached to Exhibit B, there may be future infrastructure and other improvements which will serve both the facilities and the real property owned by the city located adjacent to the property. The district agrees that it shall be responsible for a proportional share or allocation of the total capital cost of said improvements at the time when said capital improvements are made by the city. The district's proportionate share or allocation of said future infrastructure costs shall be calculated by the city utilizing prudent engineering principles and invoice monthly to the district during construction of said improvement based upon payment of requisitions submitted by the city contractor. The district shall remit the proportional amount due to the city within 60 days of the invoice. There's no specific reference to percentages in that document. So it doesn't exist.
From that was that it's 30% based on prudent engineering principles when it's first designed, which we got, right? But then it goes into monthly, saying they will bill us as construction goes on, which leads me to believe. So which one?
If I may respond,
Yeah.
in contract law, you can't enter a binding agreement cannot be what's called illusory. What does illusory mean? Illusory means that there's no clarity to what your obligations are. There has to be an offer, there must be acceptance, there must be compensation paid, but there must also be some clarity as to what you're bargaining for. I'm assuming for discussion, and lawyers don't like to use that word, that the good people who wrote this document back in the day didn't bargain away their rights, including the rights you're having this discussion this evening, which is to at least look at what's being asked of you before you make a public decision spending public money. I used the word custodian earlier. Beyond being custodians, you're also fiduciaries, but so are the city council members. You're not in a dissimilar boat legally under Florida law or the Florida Constitution, but in the context of these provisions, I think that thus far, in the context of the motion that's been made, it certainly is in order legally.
Okay, so contractually, just going what we have in a contract, we have an obligation. You can debate the 30% or it's higher or lower, but it was determined that that's what was recommended. And so from my perspective, we are Beach and Parks and we're a taxing authority and we need to contribute to the project. Now, next point that was raised was just general stewardship and the size, the scope of the facility. I don't disagree with you, Bob. I think, when we priced out the golf course maintenance facility, I thought we were coming into an estimate, we were pushed back very significantly. It was and as I would remember, it was a Butler building. It was a very standard type building. We were budgeting maybe, I'm pretty confident it was around $2 million, maybe tops for a maintenance facility. That's for 212 acres and a golf course. Okay, that's pretty good. My open question would be is, if this is a facility for Countess DeHorney, what we're paying for, that's okay, fine. If it's a maintenance facility or a utility center, that's different. Okay, so going into this, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt. It is for the park, it's 7 million is a very high price. It's 5 million more than what we would have paid over at years ago. Prices change. As far as getting into the bid aspects of it, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt that they have to go through a convoluted process to get there. It's not ideal. It's not what necessarily I would do in the private world either. And they're going to get bogged down on this, just like they got bogged down with other things, whether it's wildflower, whether it's gumbo limbo, it's one thing after another. It's very unfortunate. I don't want to see them get bogged down. I want them to get the lowest possible price. I want them to do well. I just think some of the structure we've put in place around it is makes it difficult for them and for us, but I think they have the best interests of taxpayers and the residents in mind. So I'm supportive of giving them a go ahead to the project with the cap. I think they're going to have to look at it hard to say whether they want to value engineer it out. Given the supply chain issues, all the inflationary issues, I really don't know where they're going to come in at. And I think they're going to be struggling with it. But 7 million sounds like a very luxurious thing, and they can cut out the conference rooms. They can cut out things to get it into a more reasonable structure. But they have to start somewhere, because it sounds like they can't start at all if they don't have an allocation from the district. So
He said that, because I asked them if this was a good estimate, they thought that this was a good estimate, and they said yes. So that's what we're going off of, I feel like. So we're capping it off of what they said that they were confident at.
Mr. Gorin, I remember very vividly when the city came back and said, you know, you can't spend that amount to build a golf course. You need to go back and revisit the costs and cut costs. Is there a provision in our agreement that we can ask them to go back and revisit this and cut some corners and bring down the cost?
And Madam Chair, I think that implied within the contract is the same concepts that you all have spoken to, which is the issue of fiduciary responsibility and custodianship. It may not be expressly provided for in the document, but impliedly, here's an example. Assume for discussion that the city were to just be spending money in a reckless fashion. Not that they will or they should, but just assume that for discussion. Does this contract require you to write a check if they're acting recklessly? Does it require you to simply draft a check if you think that they're acting recklessly? I don't think it does. I think you have an independent obligation as an independent taxing district to raise that issue to the extent that you believe or think that there is such an issue to raise. Would be my view again that you have an ongoing obligation as stewards to make sure that the money that's being spent is spent rationally, reasonably, and that whatever bids they are receiving are both the most responsible and responsive bids. If through an examination independently by your staff, limited staff that we may have, being Brianne and others, I suspect, you need to look, if you look into that situation, the answer is that's a question you could raise, which is whether or not it really are. But that's assuming for discussion that the procurement code in the city was fully complied with, and that they went through all of the steps to get to the best answer, which is to get the best possible bidder, and the best possible bid, and the best possible contractor to perform the service. But that doesn't mean that you are excused from raising the bar and asking those questions, or at least raising them with the party to whom you're writing a check. That I don't want to use the word reckless there, but that would be a departure from your standard of conduct as public officials to simply say, to close your eyes, write a check. That's not what this contract either permits or allows.
All the question?
I think we've asked them that too, though, already, haven't we? That they've done their due diligence and they've done their engineering, their value engineering. I think we just need to go ahead and do roll call on this. Is everybody in agreement on that? Have we all had our say?
And
Okay.
just to be clear, you do have the right, I've been reminded by our executive director, to audit records for operations and maintenance. It's not being removed from this discussion or removed from the motion that's been offered.
Allocated in the reserve fund for the 2,025,000 for the Countess de Hornley Maintenance Facility? Is it allocated?
This motion is to cap the project at $2,025,000. We will take that out of the reserve fund and allocate it and approve this project at that amount and no additional costs.
And if I may, Madam Chair, the objective is the word by the maker and the seconder was to use the word cap. Cap has a particular legal meaning, which is a limitation on the obligation. That was the objective, I think, of the maker and the seconder. That's another phrase that makes sense also.
Commissioner Ernst? Commissioner Engel? Commissioner Rollins? Commissioner Vogelsang? And Commissioner Wright?
Yes.
Motion passes 3-2.
Okay, number 2, the YMCA agreement. Brianne.
Commissioners, on page 7 of your agenda packets, you will see the start of the agreement, which I want to thank Sam and Jacob for working diligently to get us to this point with the YMCA, and also Brian Hunt from the YMCA for working with me to get all these things worked out. And of course, our resident insurance guru. I did speak with Commissioner Rollins throughout this process to get some of these insurance items tackled. So thank you for devoting some extra time to this agreement as well for those things. The agreement starts on.
Voices on the way, Brian.
Yeah. We'll get that paid ASAP. Back in December, the board awarded this opportunity to the YMCA, selected them out of 2 proposers to run the summer camp program that they offer. It's a general camp program out of the community center there at Patchogue Park. So this agreement, of all the things that they offer at the YMCA, this agreement only contemplates the summer camp. The agreement term is a year long, so there's opportunity, but the YMCA would have to come to us if they wanted to add additional programming beyond the summer camp, and then we would approve those via amendments, if I'm saying that correctly, Mr. Gorin. But with that, we're looking tonight for approval of this agreement, and then we can move forward with getting them in there and ready for camp. And I'm here for any questions.
I'd like to have some discussion before we get to a motion, because there's some things I want to point out in this, in the agreement. To be sure we're on the same page with the YMCA. This was designed for the sole purpose of using the James A. Rutherford Center for activities, intellectual activities that could be science camps and things of this nature, as well as a summer camp program that encompasses all of these different variety of things. And that was the idea, was to confine the activities to that facility as far as the base of operations, and not to expand it beyond classroom experience, except some outdoor activities, the trails, the playground, and the like. And that's the reason that I supported that motion. A couple of things that I wanted to point out with the scope of services. I think they said the YMCA will provide recreational educational programs with a focus on youth development, healthy living, and social responsibility. May include aftercare, summer camp, visual arts, health and wellness, community meetings, and enrichment programs. And what I'm about to say, I want to be sure it's understood. These are activities that relate to James A. Rutherford Center itself. I don't want to get into expand this agreement beyond that to include any outdoor sporting activities that would be in conflict with what we already have in the community. I'll be clear if anybody understands my motives here. But I don't have a page number here, but it says the YMCA will deliver hands-on quality out-of-school instructions, health, wellness, educational experiences, increased literacy, STEM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, social competence, and character development. Campers also enjoy the traditional experience of fun and enriching activities for 9.5 hours a day, including but not limited to arts and crafts. I don't know what sports means. That's not something that I'm looking to support on our fields out there, because we have enough activity going on those fields, even though they're sports turf. We have Lynn University, which takes up a good portion of that during the week. And I don't want to expand the scheduling of further sporting activities that might be conflict with what we have in the community. We also have the capabilities to offer, and I'm just reading from their response. We have capabilities.
Just for clarification, this was not, he's not reading from the agenda packet. That was the attachments that Joanne sent, was their proposal, which is one of the exhibits in this agreement.
And everybody got a copy of that,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, I just
Okay.
want to be clear that it was the
Okay.
exhibit that was attached to an email.
Thank you for that. We have the capabilities to offer community-based special events and wellness programs, blah, 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 athletic training, conditioning, adult sports leagues. And that's beyond the scope of what I had envisioned with this activities with the YMCA. And the concerning part of this in this exhibit was programs, community engagement, and the participants. They have 1,144 people in youth sports, 378 individuals in adult sports. They're maintaining that activity very well at their facility on Toledo, and I think that's where I suggested it be maintained, rather than trying to load up this field with activities the entire day. And I could be wrong about this, and I could not get verification about this. There is a possibility that the YMCA has made a submission to Florida Youth Soccer for membership, which also gives me pause to be concerned about the expansion of activities beyond this field house, beyond the James A. Rutherford Center. So I just want to be clear that this agreement was originally designed for camping activities, related activities through the use of James A. Rutherford, not expanding activities out on the field itself, whether that's the diamonds or the rectangular fields.
We did put in here on section 3.7, just to clarify, the use of the playground, walking trails, and open green space does not require pre-approval. Camp activities taking place on turf fields, tennis facility, or other athletic facilities must be scheduled and pre-approved. So
Well,
they would have to
Yeah,
come to us.
I don't think that goes far enough to
Okay.
emphasize what I'm concerned about, is that I think there only so much space for setting aside facilities for training. We already have a lot of issues with rectangular space and people finding a place to play, people finding place to recreate for free space. We've already talked about that. I don't want to give away any additional scheduling opportunities for the city to take care of the existing community. And this agreement does address, and we did approve the activity for the James A. Rutherford Center and walking trails, playgrounds, et cetera, but not for athletic leagues, which I think is problematic for us to do that when we already have that facility scheduled pretty well. So
7, just to say that those facilities are not available for the camp program. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, discuss.
Well, I don't necessarily, I just do not believe that it was our intention to expand this to where we would be supporting another adult league, another youth sports league. I think it was, we got into this idea, we had two proponents. One was an art facility where they would take over the activities within the James A. Rutherford Center. And then YMCA, which I fully support because they do a wonderful job in our community. I just think that they need, if I'm going to give up the building, I want to make sure that they understand that this is not a free range situation where the park is game for any expansion of their athletic programs. If they've got athletic programs going on at their facility, then that's where they should remain.
I think, Bob, I hear you. I agree with what you're saying. This is a proposal for summer camp. If you don't like them, cancel it at the end of the year. I mean, it's a summer camp. So I don't want to be constraining to say you can't go beyond this 4 squares or anything. I think it's pretty well defined in the 3.7 section. And I hear you. I completely agree that we don't want to have conflicting things, but part of the reason we're here is because there was no programming, and that was the whole issue. And it kind of I'd say a failure just collectively on our part, not having a viable program. You have an organization that went through COVID perfectly fine and offered community services exceptionally well. And so you have a center over there that is dead empty. That's just an opportunity. So what I'm saying is do they want to have a paint camp outside of the portico there? I'm fine with it. I could care less about that. As long as they're doing programming stuff around that community center, as you said. Now, are they running a soccer camp out on the fields? No, I don't think. I agree with you. That's not the intent. But it doesn't mean that someday if the city and coordinating these things, we would go to them and ask them, maybe, but this is for summer camp. This is, if we don't like what they do this year and they're not good friends and good neighbors, they don't come back next year. I look at it more as floating a trial balloon to see if this even works, and let them have the leeway to see if it works. But your point's well taken. But I also think it stimulates good, healthy. What's good for residents is recreate. What do I care if everyone is out there and there's more people out there and we're fully utilizing? What I do care about is a field that is reserved, whether it's for Lynn or for anyone else, and not used. That is a mistake. We want to let, just you and I are on the same page of let adult leagues, let people, taxpayers get out there, as many people as we can get on those fields. I think it's a great thing. And so I don't think they're saying that they want to do that. They're looking for Patch Reef Community Center. And I would say it's taken long enough to get it this far. Let it go the next step. If we find out we don't like what they're doing, we should reel it in a little tighter and say, no, we can't do that. But I think you're going to find they have similar values to what we have, and I think we're going to be okay. So I wouldn't want to constrain them right now. I like to let's get this thing done and let them start planning, because it's March. And we go to the end of March to do this. It's then April, and then it's hard to get the programming out and to advertise and do all. So I think they need that time to just move forward. But your point's well taken.
I wasn't suggesting that we delay this in any measure at all. And I wasn't suggesting that they couldn't come outside the community center at all. I agree. I think this is a fantastic organization for the community. And it's got community-wide support, as evident by this breakfast we just had recently over there. So I'm thrilled that we're doing this with them. I just want to set the perimeters so that we've been on record, and this is a summer camp. I thoroughly hope that as we go through this, that they'll roll into something during the fall, like after school care, and use the facility for some STEM training. But I just don't want to have another. It's tough enough getting a space for the community that we now have, maybe with the phase 2 over at Spanish River, things will lighten up. But I know I hear it. You guys hear it about the fact that you can't go out to the field and kick the ball around with your kids without some issues. And the permitting that The adults in one of the programs here in town are using the outfield at Spanish River on the baseball field for their games. So it just demonstrates the fact that there's a tremendous need for recreational space. I want people to recreate. I like the concept that the Y has proposed for us. I'm supporting that. I just want to make sure that they understand what the perimeters are. At this point, things can always change. Things can always change.
Part of our concern, and I agree with Bob about that. We want our community to have as many of the open fields as possible. But I think that our council and our executive director also in 3.8 did, it was very helpful that they can't sublease or assign the usage of the fields or the community center or anything. So I'm happy to see that and I appreciate that.
Anything, Steve?
I think, as Craig said, this is for summer camp and summer camp only. It has a definite expiration date. It sets out the terms under which the facilities can be used. They have to come to us before they can use any other facilities. And what we already have scheduled takes precedence. So I don't think, as far as this agreement is concerned, that there should be any concerns as far as expanding to use of our fields. Now, I understand your concern, Bob. We do need more space. And we want to make sure that the people that are currently using our space get the opportunity to use it, whether it's soccer or lacrosse or baseball, whatever the case might be. So I think that as it stands, I think the agreement is fine for what it covers. I mean, once summer camp is over, it's over. This agreement is done. So I think we'll be okay.
The agreement has a year term. Right now, the only programming is summer camp. If they come to us in the summer and say, hey, we want to add, yoga and some STEM programs, we can come back with an amendment to this board.
It's specifically laid out as summer camp. After that, that's a separate discussion. And if it's something that we don't like, we can always say no.
And with all that, I think the normal process is to make a motion. So I'd like to make a motion to approve this as is, with duly noted that, the intent here is Patch Street Community Center. It's not a fields. It's not a competing program. We look forward, they offered that in their proposal, but it was not what they're saying they're doing. So if they do something different, they need to come talk to us.
I agree with you. I don't want to make the same mistake we did with this ILA on Spanish River and not be out front and saying this is a concern we have. And I'm delighted with the choice that we have. I think it's going to be wonderful for our community. I'm excited about the possibility of them continuing to use this facility after summer camps. That's the reason why I would hope that they would. I'd hope that they would find this to be a suitable location for their programming. I just wanted to, nail down some of the concerns they had on the periphery so that they know before coming to us that we had some discussion and we had some concern about the expansion of any leagues, any sports leagues and their usage of the facilities that would compete with those organizations that are already out there. And the facilities are, pretty much at peak performance as they are now. But I've concluded my remarks. I think I've made my position clear and I look forward to Craig's motion.
For a second. Shannon, I just wanted to say I was happy with the agreement. I think that getting scheduling and pre-approval is important for the turf fields. I think the turf fields would be used a lot less though in the summertime, especially with them being like 15 degrees hotter in the summertime. But I think it is important to have the access for the sport, for the camp. Because I know my kids wouldn't want to go to a camp necessarily where they didn't have access to some fields and play kickball and soccer and football or whatever. I think it's an important aspect for a summer camp to have.
I think we're all in agreement with that.
Yeah.
Just so, you know, I'm not trying to restrict any of the activities other than the fact that I want to make sure that it doesn't cause any issues with the scheduling that the city already has for the programs that are in place and historically using those facilities. And I know the summer does get busy at Patch Rate. I've seen people over there training. And I see also a lot of people over there coming home from college are out there working on their sport, whether it's lacrosse or soccer. So, and I want there to be space out there where people can do that, just walk out there and play, as we've all been concerned about that.
Yeah, and I think, I mean, it's 125 kids that will be at the camp. And even like that spaced out during the day amongst the different age groups, there'll probably be 20 kids max at one time on a corner of the field. So I think at this point, it's probably, we're good. Okay, so should we do roll call?
Commissioner Engel, Commissioner Rollins, Commissioner Vogelsang, and Commissioner Ray. Motion passes.
Okay, final number 3 for regular business, the Via Verde discussion.
Commissioners, on page 20 of your agenda packets, there's an email from Hawkeye Management detailing some of the members of the Via Verde Homeowners Association. To back up, 2 meetings ago, Commissioner Ernst brought up our involvement and participation with the Via Verde HOA. We aren't currently very active with them. We do pay an annual fee. We pay $1,975 to the HOA each year because this building is within that area. We did get some information from them, which Commissioner Ernst asked staff to research and come back with at a meeting when we could put this on the agenda to discuss whether or not the district wanted to be more involved, more active with this particular group. So the information is in this packet, and then we also sent you some other documents that were more lengthy. We didn't want to include those in the packets because of their size. But we're here tonight to discuss this further and see if the board has any interest in pursuing any other information regarding this.
Erin is interested in it, so I will nominate her to be on that board, but HOA board. No, look, the thought process on this was, I was a bit surprised paying the bill that they changed their bylaws to kind of have this $15,000 penalty or capital contribution for any change of property. And so it just begged the question, who are they? What are we? What is our role in this whole thing? And then Brianne overwhelmed me with paper or a PDF that was just endless. And to my surprise, Via Verde is bigger than a bread box, so it's a pretty big, large entity. I'm actually kind of surprised it's so big overall, but to know that we're a key part of it, if there's any, transactional change here, it could trigger this 15,000 for this. That's what was a point to me. So I don't know that there's a lot that we can do on it, but I do know that they are, a fairly active community for the most part, and they send things out. So I just think we need to keep our awareness of what they do. We are a player in their backyard. That's all.
And how do they send out newsletters or emails or anything? Craig, is that how you got onto this?
Yes, they, with their invoice, they sent, that, and they have sent things before, that just comes with it, kind of summarizing. And I would, I say politically active, they are politically active because they have gone about, in their annual email, talk about the city council elections, what they're doing, so they're actively engaged in things for their own benefit. So, and I just think it's good to know, who's doing what and why they're doing it. That's all.
an assessment there annually, we should be getting their information and passed out to us as well, you know, so.
That was really my point.
Yep.
It should go to
Yep.
everyone so we see that.
I agree. I heard you were going to be nominated for that board.
No, I actually nominated the vice chair.
I think he declined.
So are we good on this? Okay. Okay, approval of payroll and invoices.
I'd like to make a motion for approval of payroll and invoices of the amount of $379,587.22.
Okay, discussion? Joanne?
Ernst? Commissioner Engel? Commissioner Rollins? Commissioner Wilkerson?
Yes.
And Commissioner Ray.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Rhiannon?
Commissioners, not too much tonight. I want to let everybody know that the long-awaited pipes and pumping project at Gumbo Limbo is underway because mobilization has started. So that project is beginning and hopefully gets finished in a good time frame. We anticipate having 90% drawings for the Swim and Racket Center renovations done this week. The surveying at Patch Reef started where their new pickleball courts will be. So they started the survey over there. For the general public, which we don't have many participants tonight, but we did put it on social media. We're sending out a press release as well. The open survey for Ocean Breeze closes this Friday. We've put that out there last week. We're going to put it out again this week. I also let Mr. Chaffee know, so he already sent an email out this afternoon. But the open survey again for Boca Chica closes this Friday. That'll be it. And then Miller Lake, they will get all that data collected within a couple of weeks, and then we should have reports on some of that stuff coming to us shortly after those surveys close as far as what those results were. And then also just to let the board know, one of our goals internally has been to select some facility inspection software that would help us organize as Melissa goes through and does facility inspections. It would let us keep track of those work orders and things that we've recommended to the city to repair or fix and things that need to be cleaned. So she worked on researching some software at the beginning of this year. We've started sampling some software. So I'm going to send you all a sample report where we've started this, and you'll see how she did a walkthrough. It allows her to upload photos on site and then track that progress. It emails them to city staff responsible for those facilities. So it was not the software package. We're just testing it right now to see how it works, but just wanted to keep you guys involved in that process, and you'll see some sample reports. And if you have any suggestions, we can incorporate those and see how the software works. But right now it's working out well, and it's a good way to start tracking any of these things that we do. Warranties, any kind of repairs that happen when we're waiting, how long it takes for work orders to get processed and things like that. So that's worked out well. And then future agenda items. March is actually a midway point through the year. So I wanted to do an update on where we are with our budget and CIP projects. We do not have any invoices from the city yet. So it's going to be just an update on our district CIP projects and where we're at with those and the money that we've spent. I don't know when we will get the city invoices. We have not. I think they're still finalizing last fiscal year. I'm not 100% where they're at. So for now, I want to do an update just so you guys know where we are with our projects, how much money we spent on the things that we set aside just in our facilities, and then also an Ocean Strand update on where we're going with that. So that's all I have.
Being nice to be back in the chair and to be with all of you, and thank you for your patience with my brief absence, but I appreciate the care and concern. Thank you all very much. The 2022 legislative session ends on Friday, March the 11th. We've been tracking some bills over the past number of months, which principally impact local governments and to some degree districts, but we will hopefully be able to give you a fuller report after the session ends in what context such bills may have some impact on this organization. I don't know, we've actually been sending you the reports as we did last year. Some of them are more municipal and local government related than district related, but I'd like to focus in on what may impact this organization once the session ends. It's supposed to end on time on noon on the 11th, which is this coming Friday, and hopefully we'll be able to report back at the next meeting some impacts of the type that we described. I just want to say thank you very much for the conversation that you had this evening about the the ILA. I realize that these are very difficult topics of discussion, and we try to give our best interpretations of contracts, and we'll continue to do that given the nature of this organization and how it works and how it operates. And appreciate the robust conversation. To the extent that you are fiduciaries and you are custodians, we truly subscribe to that, much as we do ourselves as local government practitioners. And we believe that our recommendations matter in the context of how you expend public dollars. We're very conscious and thoughtful about how you do it and why you do it. And to the extent that Brian has done a phenomenal job in keeping us advised of how to prepare ourselves for what may be on the table each board meeting, we can only say thank you for that as well. So thank you for having me, and nice to be back with you again. Thank you very much.
Susie?
It is nice to have you back, Mr. Gorin. Mr. Horowitz did very well in your stead, but it's always nice to have you. I'd like to say something. Last Tuesday, we got to see Brianne in action as she addressed the Federation of Homeowners without notes. She did an excellent job, and I am so proud of you. You just did such a great job. The president of SABRE also was there and gave a nice talk about SABRE. But Brianne, without notes, you were exceptional. You gave past, present, and future, and gave everybody an idea of what we do here. And thank you for doing that.
So I thought it was a nice meeting. I was disappointed there wasn't a bigger crowd there, and Michael Calvert wasn't able to attend. But it's just nice to get our message out to people because as hard as we try to not to be out there, people still don't know the difference between the city and the district, and that's okay. I learned to live with that because we do such a great job at there. I don't care who gets credit for it. The other thing is we have in September, our property insurance comes up, and it's not too early to be talking about that because if anybody has a homeowner has gotten their homeowner's insurance bill lately, you know a little bit about what's going on. If you read the newspapers, there are several insurance companies that have been put into receivership in the state, which essentially means that they went bankrupt. And Florida has a guarantee fund to back up those losses for those insolvent insurers. But it's touched on the commercial property significantly, especially outdoor property. So we need to be looking at going to bids early so that there's really only two companies that would probably quote us, and they're both of those are self-insurance funds, Florida Municipal Insurance Trust, which we have now, and then there's another that is owned by the Brown & Brown organization. Then I'd also, in doing that process, we need to take we don't get regular updates on claims activities, do we, Brianne, from the city? When a claim occurs on a property, it goes to the city risk management. And I don't know, and that also plays a role in our insurance premium pricing. So as we get closer, I'd be looking at May to try to get an RFP put together so we could get it out. And the result is we could end up with the same company because they do give us a nice dividend, but I think that we need to make sure that we explore the possibilities. Sometimes when your insurance company knows you have competition, they sharpen the pencil a little bit, and we may need that. I don't want to spend any money unnecessarily. The other thing is that if anybody has an idea, I've come up with an invention idea. When gasoline hits $9.99, somebody's going to need to figure out how to change the pumps. But at that point, it rolls over to 10. That's an extra digit. So anybody wants to help me with promote that idea, all I need is a little money, and I'll go to task on trying to get a copyright on it.
Two things. One, piggybacking claims report, I think that would be good to have quarterly claims report of what's going on overall for the district. And so we should see something soon, maybe if we could do that. Number two was just about the overall staff and assessment of where are we at with pay and everything like that. And I say that because when I got on this board a few years ago, we put these positions in place and they kind of evolved the way they were. And I would tell you that Brianne, in her role as executive director, I think she's done an exceptional job. And I think you got a lot of things going on. And you have inflation, you have when we designed what we designed at the time was, based on everyone's level of experience, what we thought our needs were. I think it would probably be a good idea for us just to reassess or maybe go through Sam and the law firm of how they would categorize it. And I think we can make a decision. Do we have the right ranges for salaries on everything? That's my question. And so I think it would be the best time is to do it now. Because we don't know, what's in the future or anything. And I think this district would be remiss if we lost any one of 3 members of our staff, and then should just take a periodic look at it. So discussion item to talk about. And the last thing I would recommend is that we think carefully about our city district partnership. As we think forward of how this whole Miller Lake thing is going to evolve, and the Boca Chica golf course, I want to make very clear that we need the city as a partner to, one, facilitate whatever is going to happen. I mean, whether they're going to participate in building something or not participate, or if we're going to build something, or whatever happens out there, we need them as a strong partner. And I think we're better off keeping them involved, keeping the communication going, even though, I know there's always some tension or miscommunication on different things. We need them for the community to do this quickly, because I certainly don't want to be on the board for trying to divide, create Boca Chica in some environment. We have to look for partnerships outside and inside with the city to really make this evolve into something meaningful for the community. So just keep it in mind, but I think somehow or another, come the summer, we will have to have a joint meeting. You might want to start planning it now if we should, to say, what are we going to do? What are they going to do? We'll work with that, and hopefully we'll have some third parties who are interested in it as well. So those are my 3 items.
Well, I think that's a good idea. And I think maybe Brienne can go to Miller Lake and see when the best time is to kind of go to them and say, this is kind of where we're at. Because we need to have something to show them, really. We can't just go to them and say, well, they're gathering ideas and still, you know what I mean? So I think in June, right, is when the preliminary master plan is going to be
It's
ready.
for the public input of that preliminary. So there would obviously we're going to have data and information before that for this board to digest and process as they go through that process. The city council does a shortened schedule in the summer, so I can talk to the city clerk and see maybe after that June date, after the public input on the master plan.
Yeah, I mean, ask Miller Lake when they think the best time is
Okay.
for all of us to meet based on the information that they're going to have, I guess.
Okay.
Because they'll know what they're going to have and presenting and stuff like that. So I think that would be the best thing to do. And maybe July, hopefully, maybe. Steve?
I have one thing. In going over our meeting schedule, I noticed that we moved the second meeting in April from Monday to Tuesday. Aside from the fact that that Monday is the day after Easter, it's no holiday, and I can't see any reason for moving it to the 19th. I think it should be back on the 18th, on the Monday.
Monday is considered a holiday.
I mean, staff is working.
It's not a federal holiday. We've typically only recognized, if Steve's right, we've never recognized it as we're working that day, unless you want to give us that day off. I mean, but our schedule has us as a regular scheduled
Yeah.
day, and it's
Because I believe
the
Palm
facilities
Beach
are open regularly.
County schools give it off because it's the day after Easter.
The no school Easter Monday and it's tax day.
It's been tax day before. But, we've had meetings on days when schools have been off. Yeah,
To
it
move it.
poses a major inconvenience for me.
That day, so.
Okay,
Motion, we amend the April 19th meeting to April the 18th, which would be a Monday.
any discussion?
We should have some conditions that Steve brings something in to eat for that.
Hmm.
Also Passover, I could bring in 3 boxes a month, 5 boxes a month. So, with the accompanying cream cheese.
Roll call?
Commissioner Engel? Commissioner Rollins? Commissioner Vogelsang? Yes. And Commissioner Ray? Motion passes.
Okay, I don't have anything. Sam, glad you're back. And yeah, I was there for the presentation that Brianne did, and the president of Sabre, who was very good. So it was good to be out there in front of people telling everybody what we do. So that was good. And so future agenda items, we're gonna have an update on the budget CIP for the district projects and Ocean Strand update and possibly a discussion on pay ranges for the staff. Yeah. Okay.
Any more time?
Okay. Okay.
And then down the road, we'll start working on an insurance RFP and
For May.
we'll provide a claims update too. Yes.
Okay.
Move to adjourn.
Commissioner Engel?
Yes.
Commissioner Vogelsang?
Yes.
And Commissioner Ray?